The future home for Locomotion No.1 has caused much controversy and concern amongst members of the Darlington and Shildon communities. For those who don't know, Locomotion No.1 currently resides inside the Head of Steam Museum in Darlington. It's held there under licence but actually belongs to the National Railway Museum, who acquired it from British Rail many years ago. That licence runs out soon and the National Railway Museum want to relocate it to Locomotion in Shildon. The news has hit the press. Online petitions are being circulated. It's even been mentioned in the House of Commons. The National Railway Museum has been accused of cultural vandalism. This talk is not to tell you what to think. It's here to make sure that you have the facts before you decide. If you base your decision on misinformation, it's only too easy to demolish your argument. So let's get things right. First, some people claim that Darlington is Locomotion No.1's home. Others, that its home is Shildon because that's where its journey started when the Stockton and Darlington Railway opened on the 27th of September 1825. So let's look at the homes of Locomotion No.1. Locomotion No.1 was made in Newcastle at Robert Stevenson and Company on 4th Street. But your home is not necessarily where you were born, is it? Nobody is telling her to go back home, are they? The first part of the railway track bed that she was placed on was at Aycliffe Lane, now Hyington Station, near Newton Aycliffe, a little before the official opening. That wasn't her home either then, more a point of entry to the railway. The Stockton and Darlington Railway Company chose New Shildon as the location for their railway works, and that included the construction of an engine shed where the engines would be housed when being maintained or out of action. New Shildon was also the location where Locomotion's journey started on the 27th of September 1825. The previous 5 miles west were too hilly for a locomotive, so wagons were hauled by rope powered by stationary engines at Etherley and Bristleton. So, New Shildon was the home to Locomotion No.1 for as long as she worked for the Stockton and Darlington Railway, probably until about 1846, although she worked along the entire length of line between Shildon and Stockton until then. But that's not the end of the story. You can have more than one home in your life, can't you? So from 1846, she was reused as a pumping engine at Howden Station. She was then sold or loaned to West Durham Colliery, owned by the Pease family, and again used as a pumping engine. Her importance to the development of the railway was not forgotten though, and in 1856 the S&DR spent £50 putting her back into her original condition, more or less, ready for her to be displayed on a plinth outside North Road Station in 1857. It's surely relevant that the Stockton and Darlington Railway Company chose Darlington as the best place to display her. They presumably did that because Darlington was home to the company's HQ, and home to the Peases who were behind the development of the railway and its subsequent expansion. From the outset it was Darlington that featured on the company's notepaper and invoices. Darlington would be her home, albeit with many journeys away from 1857 until today. In 1892 she was moved to a plinth in Banktop Station, later joined by Derwent. And she was moved in 1975 to her present location in the newly opened museum at North Road Station, now the Head of Steam. Darlington adopted Locomotion No.1 with enthusiasm, and she featured on the town's coat of arms, and her funnel is used in the council's logo. So how does this stack up? Locomotion No.1 worked on the Stockton and Darlington Railway and was based at New Shildon for 21 years. She's been based in Darlington for 163 years. and she's been a museum exhibit since 1975. That's 45 years, longer than she ever worked as a locomotive. So where does this leave us? Clearly Shildon and Darlington both have a right to claim her. That's all the more reason why she should be shared. But there are other things to consider. There's also a replica Locomotion No.1. Here it is with Jane Hackworth Young showing off our silk scarf inspired by Hackworth's plug wheel, which was later fitted to Locomotion No.1. This replica belongs to Beamish, but is currently located at Locomotion in Shildon. The replica should have a role to play in telling the story of Locomotion No.1 and the development of the modern railway network. Wherever the original is, the replica should be elsewhere. They could alternate. Both museums will have an enhanced offer, and both are likely to offer some element of live steam. So when discussing where the locomotive should be located, it's pointless making that decision on how each museum is presented in Access now. Things will be very different by 2025. When both museums have a claim to Locomotion No.1, when both communities are keen to have ownership of her, when both museums are going to make major investments in developing their offer, and when both museums are linked by the same live track that was opened in 1825 and used by Locomotion No.1 during her 21 years of service, then it's a wonderful opportunity for staff and elected politicians from all sides to talk to each other about how she can be shared and made available to the widest audience possible. Her importance is not just to Darlington or Shildon. She represents a world change in transport and belongs to us all. So when you sign your petitions, make sure that you also cajole officers and elected representatives to get talking and sort it out. This talk has been brought to you by the Friends of the Stockton and Darlington Railway, a charity working to promote the international importance of the S&DR and to use its history, archaeology and historic associations with pioneering people and engineering ingenuity to drive forward a programme of economic regeneration and civic pride in the former S&DR territories. You can see our website address here. This talk's also brought to you in partnership with the online gift shop www.therailwaystation.shop, which sells British-made designer gifts inspired by our railway heritage and the Stockton and Darlington Railway in particular. Here you will find a range of products inspired by Locomotion No.1. You can find out more on our Facebook page. Just search for the Stockton and Darlington Railway.